All right, so welcome and thank you for joining Georgia Transplant Foundation for our first virtual liver trends and transplant conference. First, we want to thank CareDx for being our presenting sponsor, and also thank Community, a Walgreens pharmacy, and Synergen RX for being our virtual sponsors. I'm Deb Long. I know many of you. I am the coordinator of the Mentor Project and the Trends in Transplant conferences at Georgia Transplant. And while the pandemic has posed many challenges for all of us, we are excited to offer you an amazing program virtually today. Here is a quick look at our agenda.
Deb, you're muted.
Okay, where did I leave off?
There we go. It was right when you switched slides.
Oh, okay. I think it muted me for some reason. I was just going to review the agenda quickly. We are going to kick off with a review of the programs and services of GTF. Then we will hear a story of a transplant recipient. We will next have a representative from LifeLink speak to us about connecting with donor families. And lastly, we have our two amazing transplant physicians to share their knowledge and answer questions for today. I am going to review some housekeeping next. The presentations today are being recorded and will be shared on our website for future viewing, and we will send you the links within the next day. While the speaker is spotlighted and only they will show up in the recording, your voice will still be heard if you choose to unmute yourself and ask a question or participate. You can always ask questions by typing them into the chat box to everyone at the bottom of the page. Other than asking a question or participating, we ask that you stay muted so that any background noise does not disturb the presentations today. When you receive the email with the links to the presentations, you're also going to get a survey about today's conference. We really want you to please answer the survey, as it does help us decide what we will present at future conferences. We want this to feel as close to an in-person conference as possible, so we would encourage you to reach out to other people via chat, a personal chat. And also, I mentioned at the very end of the conference, we will join back in the main room to just have an informal conversation and chat with other attendees. So if you are interested in that, please stick around after the doctor talks and we will be allowing that. Georgia Transplant Foundation does have many resources available on our website, including virtual support groups and information about all of our programs. We also encourage you to like and follow us on Facebook, where we post regularly about upcoming events. There's always a need for liver mentors, so if you're interested in becoming a mentor, please reach out to me. It's important to note that you should always defer to your own transplant physician and transplant team for questions related to your health. They are the experts on your health and wellness. We do have two poll questions today, or actually just one, to get us started. And we want everyone to answer this question, and we're going to get an idea of who is here today. So just pick one here. Please describe yourself. Are you a candidate, a recipient, a caregiver, a professional, or other? And don't forget to hit submit, and we will find the answer to that in just a second. We'll post the results. And this is the part where I'm supposed to hum the Jeopardy tune. Do, 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 do. All right. Hopefully you had a chance to click the button, and here we go. 47% transplant recipient. That is a big number.
Wow, yeah.
And we've got 13% candidates, 13 caregiver, 20% professionals. That's a really good number, and 7% other. So that is it. Now I am very excited to introduce Rebecca Moshiri, who is the Director of Patient Services. She is going to quickly review some of our programs, and you can always reach out to us if you have further questions. So.
Thank you, Deb. Good morning, everybody. I'm really happy to be here and see you all today. Thanks for attending. So I want to tell you a little bit about GTF. The organization was founded in 1992 by Tommy Smith, a transplant recipient. Next slide, please. We offer a lot of programs and services. We have financial assistance, the Transplant Fundraising Program, and education and community programs. People who can apply should be Georgia residents. They can be transplant candidates, recipients, living donors, dialysis patients, or people who are just seeking transplant. And there should be a situation of need related to the transplant. Next slide, please. First, I'll tell you a little bit about our financial assistance program. Patients who are working to get listed or who are already UNOS listed at a transplant center and are Georgia residents are eligible to apply. Our pre-transplant programs include dental assistance, which may be able to help if your transplant center is requiring you to get dental clearance in order to be actively listed. We also offer assistance with insurance premiums for non-Medicare UNOS listed patients who are currently missing work due to their disease. Our evaluation assistance program may be able to help with travel and lodging costs if you're getting evaluated for transplant and it's far from your home. We also have a program that assists living donors with travel costs and lost wages. So in case you do have a potential living donor, we want you to be able to tell them that we have those programs available to assist them. Now I'll tell you about the programs for post-transplant patients. Our emergency assistance program helps with household bills if there's an income loss related to transplant. And then we also offer short-term medication assistance to make sure you can always have access to your medication while you work with your social worker to plan how to cover the costs of them moving forward. And that may be that you just have a deductible to meet, or that you can apply to some of the manufacturer assistance programs to get assistance. But we always want to make sure that you have access to your transplant medication. We can help with lodging if you live far from your transplant center, while the transplant team wants you to stay locally just after transplant or for follow-up visits in the first year. We also offer assistance with health insurance premiums during times of transition, like maybe a job loss, or if you're getting a new job and don't have coverage for a little while, in situations like that. We really want to make sure that you continue to have your access to healthcare with your insurance premiums. We also offer transportation assistance that can help with the cost of fuel for traveling back and forth to the center for follow-up just after the transplant surgery when you have so many clinic and follow-up visits. The important thing to remember about all of these programs that I just sort of ran through is that you do need to apply through your transplant social worker. So if you have a need, make sure that you reach out to your social worker to discuss it, and then they can help you work on the application, and they would actually submit it to us. Next, I want to tell you about our transplant fundraising program. Next slide, please. So the TFP program helps transplant patients to prepare financially for what we know will be ongoing costs through fundraising and a matched grant up to $10,000. In order to get a matched account, patients must be approved pre-transplant, and they have 1 year after that approval to complete their fundraising that will be matched. And then those funds can be used primarily for medication costs and for insurance premiums, and the funds can't be accessed until post-transplant. We do also offer unmatched accounts, and the rules are a little different. You can apply and be accepted for an unmatched account pre or post-transplant. To get more information, make sure that you go to our website. Our fundraising workshop is currently available as a video on the website, and it gives lots of tips for grassroots fundraising and for ways that you can work to raise funds within your community. You can apply through the website, or you can talk to your transplant center social worker. Next slide, please. We also offer many education and community programs. The first is our Jumpstart program. It is a program that helps people to return to work or transition to employment, and it's available for recipients, caregivers, and living donors. We also have the Mentor Project, which I think many of you are involved with. It's a program where recipients can be trained and are able to offer hope and encouragement to transplant candidates. We also offer these Trends in Transplant conferences, sort of like the one you're attending now. Usually they would be in person and in different cities throughout the state. Due to the pandemic, we're offering them virtually, but we would love to see you at one in the upcoming years. We also have a Tutoring Assistance program that's available for children who have been transplanted to help them get back on track with school post-transplant. We have an academic scholarship program. We know that transplant really can change the finances of families. And so we offer these scholarships that are able to help students who are seeking post-high school education or training. And that program is open right now. We will accept applications that are submitted through May 1st. You can get more information from our website and even send the application in directly through the website. And then we also offer a couples enrichment weekend. We know that the whole transplant process can cause a lot of stress and just changes in committed relationships. So this is a couples enrichment weekend that's offered at St. Simon's Island at a retreat center. And it's a weekend for couples to be able to really focus on the relationship again, instead of focusing all on the transplant. And it's available for couples who are, the recipient should be at least 6 months post-transplant and stable. We hope to offer our next one in May of 2022. Next slide, please. So for more information on all of these programs and to be able to even get applications and see videos of the speakers that we've had at conferences, please visit our website, gatransplant.org. We also have Facebook and Instagram profiles, so we would love for you to visit those pages and follow them so that you get updates from both Facebook and Instagram. And next we have another poll question. We would love to know, how long have you had your transplant? Maybe I should do a little bit of the Jeopardy music too. Do, 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 do.
While we're waiting, Rebecca, Dina's up next. So I will introduce her just to do that quick switch so you're ready.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, so we have a great number of people who've had their transplant for 10 to 15 years. We also have people here who've had it 6 months to 2 years. 10% have had a transplant 2 to 4 years. Maybe a couple of people have had theirs for 4 to 7 years. And then we even have somebody who has had their transplant over 15 years, which is just amazing. Thanks so much for sharing with us.
All right. Next up, we have Dina Porter. We have a special thank you for Dina, who is filling in for one of our speakers who was not able to come. So thank you so much, Dina. A little bit about her is she joined LifeLink of Georgia in June of 2020 as the Family Services Liaison, and is honored to witness the connection between donor families and their loved ones recipients. She assists families in a variety of capacities after the donation has taken place and helps to address any questions or concerns. Prior to joining LifeLink, Dina was the director of a bereavement camp in a hospice organization and was also employed with a funeral home that provides grief, education, and support to individuals in the community. She relaxes by taking walks in the park and enjoys spending time with her family and friends at the lake. She also loves to play cards or games and has recently discovered Rummy Cube and is obsessed, if you've ever played that.
Yeah. Hi, thank you, Deb. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to be here this morning. I really appreciate the invite, and I really enjoy that I get to spend some time with you. And I just want to be completely transparent and let you know that my background is providing care and support to people who have lost a loved one, through a hospice or funeral home. I do not have a personal connection with having a organ or being even a donor family. So my experiences, I continue to learn from donor families and from recipients, and I can empathize with what people are going through, but I just wanted you to know I don't have that personal connection. So I learn from people like yourself, and I'm honored to do that. And we always hear how donor families are heroes. Well, I also think you as recipients are heroes. Many of you you fought for your life. You're just really waiting for that transplant. And I just want to continue to encourage you to just keep reaching for that hope and know that there will be a time where you will hopefully be able to get that transplant. But again, thank you for letting me be here this morning. And I'm going to try to share my screen. So give me just a minute to make sure I'm doing this correctly. Let's see. I don't see. Do you see my screen by chance?
No.
Deb, can you see anything?
No.
Oh, wait a minute. Let's see. Here we go. Share screen. Y'all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so here's a few things I wanted to talk about today. Should I reach out to my donor family? Different ways that you can correspond with your families, the benefits of actually connecting with them. When will I hear back, and what if I don't? And also, can I meet my family? So those are just a few things I wanted us to talk about today. And I think you have the option of maybe posing questions in a chat box. And I'm fine with any questions while I'm going along. And I think Deb was going to help me answer those if there's any. So the first thing I wanted to talk about is, with many of you being recipients already, and then I know there's several of you that are waiting, you've already had your own experience, and I'm sure you've probably already maybe corresponded with some families, but you may have had that, deciding, do you want to connect with your family? Do you want to reach out to them? What should you do? And, I want to let you know that it's a personal choice. There is no right and there is no wrong. And you have to do what you're comfortable with, where you are at the time of your life. Many times people feel like if the families reach out, the recipient thinks that they should reach back out. It's a personal choice. Yes, families love to hear from you, no doubt, but they are just wanting to share their story with you, and please do not feel like you have to reach back out. You can do that in your own time.
Dina, real quick, could you switch your view to presentation mode? Do you remember how we walked you through?
I was actually trying to find that.
The bottom right.
Yeah.
Keep going to the right.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm sorry
No,
about that.
One more.
There you go.
That one.
Okay. Apologize for that. Is that better? Okay. So once you decide what works for you, your family situation, just realize there's no right or no wrong. Some recipients experience survivor's guilt. They realize that in many cases, someone's loved one had to die for them to receive their liver. And some recipients have a very difficult time with that guilt of the fact that someone had to die in a family is experiencing extreme grief. That's something that you have to work your way through and figure out what works for you. I had an experience where a man and a wife, the man had received an organ, and the wife really wanted to correspond with the family, but the husband was just not ready. So you just have to, that's part of what you may experience, and you may not. Some recipients, they're not sure what to say. It's kind of awkward and uncomfortable. So I'm going to give some suggestions on what you can say if you're not sure. So ways that families and recipients correspond, it's via mail. So some families choose to handwrite notes. These are not I don't expect you to be able to read these. I just wanted to provide some examples of how people send mail to me at LifeLink for me to return to the transplant center to get to you as the recipient. Some people handwrite their notes. They type them on the computer and mail me the correspondence that way. They will get a card with simple words in it that they want to say, and they'll just write a little note in that. We don't allow first names, any kind of specific significant dates that would give away the identity of the recipient or the family. So we that is to protect everyone involved. But we do allow first names. And people just share about their loved one. They share about their journey as a recipient, what you had to go through, how many years you've maybe waited on the transplant list. It's just a good way to connect. But again, everything has to go through mail. So you don't mail anything directly to the family, and vice versa. Okay, some benefits of actually connecting with your family. This allows you as the recipient to express gratitude for the organ that you have received. Families really do love to hear from their recipients, even though they may not be ready to correspond back. But this just gives you a chance to say, I'm so grateful for this gift. Thank you so much. And it gives you the opportunity to share your journey and what you've been going through, and how your life has changed since receiving your transplant. Families love to know you're doing well. They really love to know what your story was. But again, it's whatever you want to share, whatever you're comfortable with. And another benefit is this is a helpful way to convey your connection with their loved one. Donor families realize that you are the connecting point to their person who's no longer here with them on earth. So there are many, these are just a few. There are others, but I wanted to share these with you. So I get a lot of phone calls. I have not heard back from my family. Why haven't I heard back? And I want to go to the point that I made in the beginning, it is a personal choice. There is no right or wrong. Our families have suffered sudden traumatic deaths and painful deaths. There's many factors, the cause of the death, the age of the person, child loss all losses are difficult. Child loss is very, very difficult. And sometimes connecting with the recipient is just too painful in the moment. Some families, 3 years down the road, they are ready and they really want to know more about the recipient. They want to correspond. They want to know how they're getting along. So I always tell recipients to, continue to write. You could write every 6 months. A lot of people choose to write on the anniversary of their transplant, just to check in. And again, families have the option of not receiving the correspondence. So I don't know if I explained this before, but as you who are recipients already know this, you give your correspondence to your transplant center and they would forward that to me. And families would let me know if they don't want to receive this correspondence. So if they know they're getting it and they're accepting it, they love hearing from you. They're just not necessarily ready to respond. So please keep that in mind of why you may not be hearing back.
Dina, I have a question along that line.
Okay.
So the question is from Thomas MacArthur, and he's wondering, he reached out years ago and never heard back. Is there a way I can check to make sure that they really received the letter? And also, now that it's 10 years plus, would it be appropriate to reach out again?
Yes. So what I have found in my experiences, especially with it being 10 years plus, families move and they don't necessarily let us know where they have moved to. So basically what I would do if I were to get that type of phone call is I would reach out to the family. I would confirm that they did receive the correspondence that a recipient is wondering if they have received. And hopefully I can get in touch with them. Most of the time I have been able to. I can get in touch with them and see if they have received it and let them know that the recipient is ready to correspond again. And are they ready, or do they want to continue to receive it? So that's how I respond to recipients wanting to know. Over the holidays, I get a lot of calls from recipients from 30 years ago. Like they had a transplant 30 years ago and they're wondering how their family is doing. And I was actually able to find that family. So yes, it is possible. We may not be able to find them, but it's definitely something that we try to do. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, I think you can move on from there.
Okay. So the last thing on this particular slide is individuals and families all deal with grief differently. Every person's grief is unique. That may be why another reason you have not heard back yet. So everyone has a journey and they just may not be ready yet to correspond. These are not to discourage you. It's just to kind of make you aware of why you haven't heard back. Because I know it can be frustrating. And I've heard from recipients and families, why can't they just send me a little note? So I have to say, it's nothing personal. They're just not particularly ready in this moment, but continue to correspond as you wish. And then many recipients and families, they want to meet each other. And as I was speaking about earlier, we protect the personal identities of our families and our recipients. And once we asked for a couple of correspondences to go back and forth between each party to help build that relationship. it gives the recipients and the families a way to learn more about that person and their loved one and who they were. That just makes the connection even deeper. And I also meant to mention earlier, when you correspond, you're welcome to include a picture of yourself, just nothing written on the back of the picture, but families love to see the recipients. So you're welcome to include that in your correspondence. So moving on from that, once both parties want to mutually take the relationship a little bit further and exchange contact information or schedule meetings, prior to COVID, we had families who could meet in our Norcross office. We would schedule a meeting that way and they could meet. Then after that, they no longer have to communicate through us. They can communicate on their own. But we ask for the recipients and the families to sign a release form that just gives LifeLink permission to share their personal information with each other. So once we receive that, we either set up a meeting or we just give our families the address, their emails, phone numbers, that kind of thing, and then they can correspond with each other as they wish. We are trying to schedule some virtual meetings just as a way to actually see each other. That we think that'd be kind of fun. So we're still in the process of doing that. Yeah. So I thought there was something I wanted to discuss with you. I think I just wanted to convey that I know that for some recipients, your recovery may not have gone the way you had hoped. It may be taking longer for you to maybe get back to some normalcy, but even you writing to your families, that you're sharing your story and you're sharing your journey, and that in itself is healing. In the same way for the families, that's hands-on grief work for our families to share their stories. And it's so important for them to be able to do that, as if they feel it's right for them. So I think that's all I had. Or does anybody have any other questions? Or if you do, I wanted to provide my email address.
That would be great. There were some people asking to contact you. We do have another question about if you're transplanted in Alabama, can we use you or go through UAB? That was a question.
Okay, that's a great question. So each state has their own organ recovery and tissue organization, OPOs is what we call them. So if you received your organ from a family in Georgia, then you would contact me. But if your family is in a different state, then you would have to contact your organization in that state. And your transplant center could help you identify who that is. And you would contact them for specific questions. Does that answer that question? I want to make sure I understood it accurately.
Yeah, I think that answered the question. We also had a question about, this seems to be most everybody's question, is just making sure, how do they know for sure the letter got, I know you talked about this already, but if maybe you can review again, making sure that the letter got there. Is there something LifeLink can do to confirm and make sure so that they know if they should contact again? This question's coming in again.
Yeah, and it is a very common question, and I completely understand. I would feel the same way if I were in your shoes. So we call it kind of the roads of communication, and it has to go through many hands, which it sounds difficult, but it's a process that works. It just takes a little bit of time, and it has to be this way because of ensuring privacy and confidentiality. But when you write a letter to your family, typically you should give that to your transplant center, who then will send it to me at LifeLink. If the family is in Georgia, they would send it to me at LifeLink. Then I would send it to the family. I can for sure reach out to the family to make sure they have received it from me. You can also, and I'm sure you do this, you probably check with your transplant center to make sure they have forwarded it to the correct organization to get it to the family. I have had recipients call me directly that know their family is in Georgia, and I can verify for them that I actually received the letter from the transplant center.
Okay. I think that's very helpful.
Yeah.
There is a question about, is there a video about the caregiver journey? I'm not sure if LifeLink would have that.
I'm not sure if there is a caregiver journey. You mean a caregiver for the recipients?
It's just, that's the question that's on there. It might be just more of a general question to, all of us. Is there a caregiver journey video out there? So that's something that Georgia Transplant Foundation can work on, as we've had lots of virtual talks. I know Rebecca mentioned on the website, you can see links to our other talks that we've had from individuals. And so we could definitely have a caregiver one. So, sounds good. Do we have any other questions? We didn't see any other questions in the chat box to ask. No, it doesn't look like we have any. Dina, we really appreciate you stepping in today. This is definitely a topic that comes up in support groups, and it's on a lot of people's minds going through transplant. So we really appreciate your input and sharing your contact. If you have follow-up questions, you could reach out to Dina as well. Dina, you can stop sharing your screen now, and we are actually going to do a few poll questions. Our next speaker is here and ready to go in just a minute, but we have a couple poll questions. But again, Dina, thank you so much for presenting today.
Thank you so much for allowing me to be with all of you.
Yes, so just hit the stop share on your screen, and then we'll be able to pull up the poll questions. There we go.
All right.
All right. So we like to ask this question because, usually we do the geographical trends in transplant conferences. And so this gives us an idea of where everybody's coming from today. So in which city in Georgia do you live the closest to? Atlanta, Savannah, Albany or Valdosta, Rome, Athens, Augusta, or Columbus. So we're excited to see where everybody's coming from today. Do, 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 do.
Have to do the Jeopardy music.
Yes, you never know. You didn't know your singing skills would come in handy for your transplant work. Okay, wow, 73% in Atlanta. Wow.
Wow.
That's amazing. But we are so glad to see that some people from Savannah, Rome, Athens, and Columbus are also here today. That's part of why the virtual conference feels like such a great thing, so that people from all over the state don't have to drive really far to see their transplant organ group topics. So thanks so much. Rebecca, I think we're ready to introduce our next speaker. We're getting a little ahead of schedule, but that's always good.
All right. So I am happy to introduce to you guys Rich Bontrager. He should be dead at least 3 times, and yet he has defied the odds medically since birth through a severe fire accident, liver failure, and transplant in 2017. Trigger, as he is commonly known, has enjoyed a 30-year career as a sports broadcaster, talk show host, and now keynote speaker, despite being born with a horrible stutter. He currently hosts a TV streaming show, How to Rock the Virtual Stage, which airs on C-Suite TV. Follow him at Keynote Rich on Twitter. Rich, I'm so happy that you're here today.
Thank you,
Can't wait
Rebecca.
to hear you.
Thanks for having me here. Hopefully I'm coming through really well. By the way, hello, Savannah. I was in Brunswick for a while, and Brunswick, Savannah, I love coming up there. That's a beautiful area. I can't wait to come back and visit again. I may share some of that into my story here this morning. But I do want to thank Deb Long, by the way. She was one that reached out to me and asked me to participate with this today, and the Georgia Transplant Foundation, countless other donors that have helped make this all possible. In fact, without GTF, it would not have been possible to do some of what we did with my own transplant story. They underwrote my post-hospital transplant stay at a hotel in Jacksonville. My mother came in as my caregiver. I had gone through a divorce and I did not have my wife. So my mom literally flew cross country, and that hotel was an amazing gift for us. So thank you, GTF, Deb, for all the donors that make this possible, because it really is an amazing gift that you get to give us, because you guys hear about the stress, you guys hear about all the chaos in our lives, and to have a good place to sleep and stay that close to the Mayo Clinic was really, really special for us. I'm going to share a little bit of my story, but I'm also going to give you more of the backstory, I hope, in all of this. My story began in 2013. I thought I had the flu for about a week, and I never got sick. Never, ever, ever got sick. So I told myself, okay, you're sick. It will go away, like I typically do, and like us men typically do. We don't really care, and so we just keep going about our business. And a week into it, I realized, okay, the flu's staying around longer than usual. If I get to this next Friday, I'll maybe go and check it out. I had a friend go drive me there. I thought I'm going to be there forever. That was the beginning of me to find out I had cirrhosis of the liver. My hemoglobin was at 3.2. The doctor said you should be dead. They wanted to know how I walked in, who drove me, what happened, and that was the beginning of my story. It took another 6 months, some GI bleeds and other surprises along the way to find out we had cirrhosis of the liver. I can remember being in the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, where I lived with my wife at the time. We were talking to the doctor, and the doctor says, you are already a dead man walking. Your liver is 75% shot and gone. It's never coming back. And boom, my life changed. And I bet many of you either know this, feel this, remember that story, whatever it was for you, when you realize literally your life just changed. We went home that night, talked to our girls. They helped me go through the cupboards and took all my salty foods, all my crackers, all my good stuff, and we went to a low salt diet right in the spot. It changed literally on the moment the doctor told us this was going to change your life forever. One of the cool things about all that was my daughter is right now in school to become a doctor. So she was already beginning to study and learn. So I had a little helpmate that we Googled and we learned so many terms and different things about liver transplant. She became my own in-house caregiver for a while to help me learn, because I don't like doctor terms and all these medical things. And that's part of the journey of this, is learning what you need to learn through it all. There's so much that we get thrown at right away as being the new patrons, the donors. There's the terminology is overwhelming. My journey took 4 years. From that moment, it took another 4 years until I finally got my transplant. During that journey, I learned a lot of the medical terms. I learned that I needed to rely on others more than I needed to rely on myself. So the whole caregiver network became so important. I resigned from a church where I was pastoring at the time. I went through a divorce, through the liver transplant during those 4 years. I relocated cross country from Minnesota to Brunswick, Georgia, to live with my brother. And by the way, I had not lived with my brother since high school. So this was going to be a grand experiment of success. It was going to be a horrible failure of two adult men coming together in the middle of a life-threatening crisis. Thankfully, he has become my best friend. We have an amazing relationship now, and he really was the caregiver through that time as we continued forward, waiting for the time. In fact, I want to show you a little picture. If you could throw up the football picture. This was me toward the very end of things, and I'm pretty shabby looking at that point. That is several months before I got the phone call. And we're going to talk about hope today. We are going to talk about the power of hope. I still believed I was okay. Look at that picture. I believed I was okay. I was laughing. I was joking. I was still driving my own car. I never got to the point where I lost those abilities. So I was fundraising and doing crazy things. That was one of the things we were trying to auction off for me. And my brother was the one that saw the hope, the fun, the silliness of his brother still going forward, even though every day he saw me declining and declining. So thanks for showing that one. Thank you. After the 4 years, it was all about hope. Hope is what I really want to speak about here today, because I think hope can heal you, it can help you, it can drive you, and hope can keep us all focused as we go through this amazing journey, pre-transplant, post-transplant, and now for the future going forward. Hope is the biggest thing that has driven my life, all my life. Like we heard in the introduction, I should be dead 3 times. Even as we went through COVID, amazing thing I learned about us going through COVID, and that ties into us as post-transplant and people going forward, was people said, didn't you have a tough time with lockdown? And I had no trouble with lockdown because I've been through lockdown several times in my life. As a burn victim, I was locked down and isolated. I learned how to have fun and do things on my own. Post-transplant, we know you're kind of locked down. You're hunkered down. You're in a little protective bubble because your immune system, very, very long time, is at risk. And we went through COVID, and a lot of people struggle with hope through COVID. So part of my message has been through COVID. Look, been there, done that. There's still hope. Hang in there. So hope is a very, very powerful thing. 4 years as I went through that journey, finally I got my liver transplant. The gift of life was given to me Saturday morning, March 25th, 2017 at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida. If you want to pop up the picture, this is me a day or two after transplant. And again, I'm still having fun. I'm still laughing and joking. I called that the Borg spike, and they all got a kick out of that. There I am still joking about Star Trek and having a good time with my medical team, and that was my Borg spike. Some people hate that picture, and some people love the picture because it still shows I'm living and I'm having a good time. And that's where I finally got to. So let's talk about hope. Let's talk about the mental side of hope, first of all. Hope is extremely mental. If you don't have the right frame of mind, we know going through transplants, the psych eval. I can remember going through the 2-week planning, and they rip you apart, put you back together with the psych eval and all the tests and everything you have to do. And I remember talking to the psychiatrist who did the reveal after I did all the tests, and they said, "You're one of the most well-adjusted people we've ever had. What helps you with this?" And I got to explain my faith, my humor, my mental capacity, all these things. Said, "You're pretty good to go. Get out of the office." And she literally kicked me out of the office because she didn't have anything to talk about. It's fast paced. This mental hope thing, the stress we go under, it's always fast paced. It's always surprising. I mean, I did not expect to go to my doctor at the Mayo Clinic and find out my liver was shot and gone, and I'm on borrowed time. I did not expect to go through moving cross country and living with my brother. And there's so many mental adjustments, but it was always hopeful. It was always future. It was always something better and greater no matter what. One of the biggest surprises came literally 24 hours post-transplant. Here I am in the Mayo Clinic. I am completely wired up to everything I can. I am in bed. My mom told me right away that even my dark raccoon eyes are getting better, and I look better. The color in my face is coming back. So I'm literally feeling and getting hope right away. I knew I was better because I was finally warm for the first time in several years. It's amazing. The new liver literally turned my thermostat up, and I'm like, did someone turn the temperature in the room up? It's really hot now. I don't need all these sheets. I had not said that for a couple of years. So it rapidly moves you and changes you. But so here I am with the doctors. In the morning, I have Jell-O in the morning. You know, all the post-op stuff. You can't eat, drink, do all these things. So here I am having Jell-O in the morning. At night, my doctor comes in and says, "So what do you want to have for dinner tonight?" And I'm like, "Well, what am I allowed to have?" We've been trained for several years now, low salt. My food basically became like gerbil food. It became really dry, really bland, nothing. And they go, "Pick anything on the menu that you want to eat." And I look at the doctor like, this is a test. This has got to be a test. "No, pick anything you want, Mr. Bontrager." So sarcastic Rich, humorous Rich says, "How about this pizza?" And I'm figuring he's going to come over there and hand slap me, right? And he'll say, "No way." His response was, "Yes." That's actually the best thing you can have. All that protein, all that good stuff. You should order that pizza. And I look at this guy like he is absolutely nuts. I have no framework in my mind anymore for 4 years of being told don't, to 24 hours after transplant, all hooked up. You can now have a pizza for dinner. But it was also the most hopeful thing I'd heard in a very long time, because again, now I have to mentally adjust. Now I have to understand I'm allowed. He said, the more protein you eat, the better. So all I did was eat protein and eat protein. They just kept stuffing it inside me as fast as they could. Also that night, they said another amazing thing. Get up and walk. We all know what post-transplant looks like and feels like. We all know you are not ready to do anything. And they literally said, you must get up and walk right now. And we hope to have you out of here by Thursday. This is Sunday night now. And I'm thinking Sunday to Thursday, there's no way I'm going to walk out of here Sunday to Thursday. I got out of bed. Oh yeah, I let a good scream out, let the pain go. But mentally, as I walked a little bit just in the room, got backed into my bed, it was like, I can do this. I can do this. And then we go for laps around the nurse's station, and we go laps around. And every day, your mental capacity changes. And every day is very, very rapid. Till Thursday, I walked out hands-free, no cane. And I walked out the front door of the Mayo Clinic laughing with the nurses. That's an amazing mental journey. It's also exhausting. I can also remember the mental capacity of hope requires you to reframe your plans. I am a big time dreamer. I had to go from big dreams to small dreams. I had to change all my capacity to what's this month's goal? What's this week's goal? What's today's goal? And for someone like me, that's a real hard mental adjustment, but I also found it the healthiest things to do. I always had the goal, big goals, but to do the big goals, you have to reframe the mental hope of the small successes going along, both on pre-transplant and post-transplant. As you rebuild back up, you have to have that mental capacity going forward. One of the other times that really stuck with me was, this was pre-transplant, but just to show how the mental adjustment goes, is my brother and I are painting his house in Georgia. It's hot. I'm from the upper Midwest. I'm not used to Georgia heat. In fact, when I first moved to Georgia, I said, what are these water bottles that everyone's carrying around? This looks really stupid. My first summer there, I find out why everyone in Georgia carries a water bottle. I'm not that dumb anymore. But we're painting outside, and I got really, really frustrated. I was mentally beat up because I was not painting at the rate that I normally could. A little area took me way longer to do. And finally, I screamed at my brother and said, I just can't do it. And he's not the most caring, compassionate guy sometimes, but Dan stopped as the caregiver and said, tell me what you're feeling. And the mental hope of releasing and being free and sharing with your caregiver, like I said, the role of the caregiver is so huge. To actually have someone to give it to was so powerful. The mental hope was really, really big. He said it was okay to actually admit that I wasn't the same Rich anymore. But we also had the hope we were going to get it done. It just may take a couple days instead of an afternoon. Hope is humor for me. Humor is one of the biggest things that I use all the way through this. All the way through that, I was cracking jokes, popping jokes. Even the very first time they found out my hemoglobin was at 3.2 back in Rochester, Minnesota, the nurses said they're arguing over who gets to come in the room and hang out with the guy. They hung 4 bags of blood to repump me up. They said, you're the most fun, lively, dead man in the entire building. And it was really fun to be that guy, to have that humor, because it drove me to keep looking at the upside of life. When I checked in the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, Florida, I had the best intake nurse. And the nursing staff is so important to our journey. We all know the staffing, the hospital team, but my nurse came in, kicked the brother out of the room, threw me my gown, and said, here, go in and change. And when you come on out, I need to put this on your bum. She was British. And so she had this giant O-ring. We've all seen the giant O-ring. And she goes, I need to put this on your bum. So I go in, come back out. She says, just lift up the gown a little bit. Don't worry. So I just moved the whole gown out of the way and say, look, you're a professional. I'm a professional. I've been around doctors for 4 years. Just slap it on there. So she peels off that sticker and puts it on there. She backs away and says, now that's my bum. No one else can touch your bum while you're here in the hospital. That's my bum. And we broke out laughing, and we created this bond of humor in the middle of the most tense, scary, moment, I was going under the knife on the table 8 hours later. And she immediately connected through humor to give me hope that I've got you. And to me, that was gold. That was absolutely, absolutely gold. See, humor breaks that stress level. It breaks it for everybody. I would say stupid things just to break the stress of the family, the doctors, my friends that would call, my daughters that would FaceTime. I would use humor to keep me going and to help the people in my life to keep going. Because the support system, they carry so much weight. They look at you, they worry about you, and a good laugh is one of the best things that I found to help everybody else out. Hope is physical in my mind. The physical change of those 4 years was absolutely radical. I've gone back and looked at video. I actually did FaceTime videos on Facebook and stuff, and I would share my journey because I've always been a broadcaster. I've always shared my life as a pastor. So I just kept doing this. I went back and recently watched some of those videos. I now understand why it creeps some people out. They saw the physical change that my hope in my own lens could not see the way they saw now. When I first arrived in Georgia, in Brunswick, I would go out to the islands and I would hike 5 miles on the beach when I first got there. Here I am, 3 years into my liver failure, and I'm still walking 5 miles on the beach. By the end, as I got closer and closer to getting on the list and transplant, I was down to a quarter of a mile walking around this little pond outside my brother's house. I did it twice a day just to keep myself going, just to say you're still moving. And it wiped me out. I was exhausted. At least I knew I was alive. At least I was trying to stay as physically fit as I could and to keep myself mentally going and be outdoors, which is so important for me. I want to share a picture right now. This is what it's like. I am now going from that quarter of a mile, returning post-transplant, quarter of a mile. I lived in Colorado for a while. I was 8,000 feet up there hiking, hands-free, no oxygen bag, no nothing. And I am hiking the Rocky Mountains where I've always loved to be. It was a journey to get back there. It did not happen overnight. But the physical journey of hope, I wanted to get to those mountains so badly. I walked it and walked it and walked it. And it was 1/4 mile, 1 mile, 3 miles to finally exploring those Rocky Mountains. I was told by some doctors, I was told by some experts, you probably won't be able to do some of the things you used to do, Mr. Bontrager. Just accept the fact that the physical change of this is going to be long-term on you. Another thing about me is I don't like giving up. I don't know how to say no. Give me a good challenge. I will take that challenge on. And so I just continued to press forward physically with this and work through it. And I want to note this really importantly, because this physical side of hope is so important that, again, caregivers, you guys are so important to this hope cycle. My brother and his girlfriend waited for 2 years to tell me this. 2 years after the fact, we're sitting around as a family and they go, you know, every morning we were checking in on you. Every night we were checking in on you. And we would discuss who was going to find you dead the next morning. Because we saw the physical toll it was taking your body. We saw what it was doing to you every day. And we literally thought one of us would find you one day. And instead, they said, we could never tell you that because your hope was you get up and go walking. You get up and start typing on your keyboard and start doing creative stuff. You get on the phone and laugh and joke with your friends. They said, your hope was so strong, we could not tell you how painful it was to watch you decline and decline. Caregivers, you are a big part of that physical hope story. And when my brother finally told me that, it blew me away. I had no idea that mentally, emotionally, he was at a point where I really was not at because my hope was driving me further and further and further. In fact, hope is all about the future. Hope is completely about the future. I have always been a dreamer. I have always had big dreams and big goals. And as my introduction told you, that I live with a lifelong stutter. I was told I would never be a broadcaster by my college professor. You have a great voice, Rich, but no one will ever hire you. What have I done for the last 30 years? I have done sports play-by-play, talk show host, and that's all I know. I only know one career. Give me a microphone and I can make a living. But when you're going through a transplant, when your health is declining, when you have raccoon eyes and you cough, you really don't get hired too often. So during my decline of health, I began to do more internet-based things, YouTube-based. And my goal was to get back in the broadcast booth post-transplant for opening kickoff of Georgia football in August. So transplant happens. We had those 4 months of recovery where you can't carry anything more than 10 pounds, maybe a milk jug at the most. And I'm walking around that little quarter-mile little pond every day thinking of football. Every day I'm thinking of how I'm going to get back in the booth and call football high school. And I made it to opening game in the press box 4 months post-transplant. My partner in the broadcast booth was so ecstatic. He was thrilled to have his buddy back in the press box. Lo and behold, we were with Frederica football in Georgia. We went to the state championship game and we ran all the way every game together for a state championship. The hope of getting back there was the driving force. And I took small steps and a lot of small steps. Also, that whole YouTube thing I began to create prepared me for the pandemic now. And now I coach and teach and present virtually all the time now. This is my world. What we're doing right now, I teach people how to rock the virtual stage. And this all came about because of my decline, my health, my transplant, recreating my broadcast career. I was actually preparing for a future, just thinking in my own creative mind, maybe I could do something through the virtual. Maybe I could do something through YouTube. And now here I am actually doing it professionally every day of my life. This is a powerful thing that you need to understand, the power of hope. Before we open up for questions, I'm going to share one last little story about the power of hope. I attended the Gift of Life celebration Jacksonville Forward in Jacksonville on October 21st, 2017. That day was actually amazing to hear doctors and other transplants from different organs all over the spectrum share about the gift of life. And we walked out back and we all had the chance to get a dove. And I held this little dove in my hand and they said a prayer and a blessing and we released the dove. And it was a blue sky, gorgeous day. And just to have that dove go flying with the gift of life ceremony, just again reinforce there's hope. There's beauty, there's transformation, there is new life. And to me, that just continuing to set the course to keep going forward and keep going forward. My hope, my hope is that every one of you that's a caregiver, that's gone through a transplant, that's on the donor list, whatever place you are at in this journey, that you never lose hope and that you use some of the things I've shared here today to help you go forward, live your life, because it is this is an amazing gift that we get. It's an actual amazing gift. So my hope for you is to go live it and live it well. I'm going to open it up for questions, or Deb or whoever is hosting here, take it back for a few moments if you would.
Thank you so much, Rich. I actually do have a question. I like to ask this of all of our transplant story presenters, and that is just, did you have a mantra or something that you just said? I know it's hope. You've really driven that home today, but sometimes there's also just like a little thing that you tell yourself over and over when things get hard or just throughout the process.
It goes back to my tenacity. Defy the odds really was that mantra. As I'm going to defy the odds. I'm not going to be one of those people that the decline takes me out. It should have slowed me down way earlier. I just told myself, and with a lot of hope, prayer, support, I just said, we're going to defy the odds again. I've defied the odds several times in life. I'm going to do it with this thing as well. I'm just not going to let it define me, label me, keep me in a box, and I'm going to press through this again. And yeah, that really was it.
Awesome. I do want to add, there was someone shared that they did a butterfly release in Jacksonville, and somebody who went to Mayo wanted to share that with you. And also just thank you for sharing your amazing journey and incredible life perspective. And I don't see any other questions. You really covered so much. Wait, we just had one come in. If you had gone through the journey as a high schooler, aside from the obvious, how do you think your journey would have been different?
Ooh, that's a great question. Since I went through the divorce and I had to go through this pretty much alone, even my children were not around me because of the distance and everything else. So it really was my brother. It was a very isolated caregiver circle. If I would have gone through it in high school, the tribe of friends and family that I had growing up in Elkhart, Indiana, would have been so immense. It would have been overwhelming. When I went through my burn accident at age 10, they wrapped around me in such an amazing way. They would come, they would look at the outside the window because I was in reverse isolation. They couldn't come in. So again, I was alone pretty much, but they could come to the window and put notes and encourage me. I think the caregiver support would have been even more immense, and it wouldn't have been the burden of my brother as much. It would have been a much spread out, stronger base as well. But I also think at that time, being young, part of it is we don't know any better. We don't know these things, and just the idea that we're Superman. I'm not going to die. Come on, I'm 16 years old. It probably would have been also that attitude of the shock of the information would have been even harder, I think, because I was a gymnast, I was a football player, I was very active, and I think that would have been part of the shock of how did a guy like me have that happen. So probably those two things would have occurred in my high school years.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, Rich. We are very thankful to have you speak today. It was a lot of fun energy. We are going to do something we have not done yet. So we